Good afternoon. I'm most grateful to AIMA for giving me the opportunity to say something about our MSc course in the University of the Highlands and Islands and in the Gaelic College, particularly because our course uses material culture, I hope, in ways that are innovative and new. So this is our title slide, and just for fun, so to speak, for the occasion that we're enjoying today, I've translated my front slide into Scottish Gaelic to give you a sense of what it might look like, and also to offer you a title for AIMA in Scottish Gaelic. I hope it doesn't offend. Well, this is the front page of our presentation that we give to potential students and to first year students of the MSc course, and shows the very attractive campus site in the south end of the island of Skye in Scotland's Hebrides, and puts the title on the left hand side and translated into MSc Material Culture and Gàidhealtachd History, and our two contacts for interested students. The selection of images that we have on our slide presentation, of which this is a shortened example, are all familiar, I'm sure, to members of AIMA, since they're drawing on regional culture, on regional ethnology, and on topics that are familiar, I know, to all of us. But more to the point, for us, they tackle aspects of Highland and Island history or Scottish history that are not usually part of conventional university courses, and this is a very important principle, that we are able to turn to material culture and, of course, to language to explore these areas of Scottish history and social and economic history in ways that perhaps are surprising to our students. These are new concepts and new views of conventional history. It's particularly important for aspects of Scottish history because Highland history particularly is very well provided with notions of stereotypes, and perhaps these stereotypes, we have to try to cut through these stereotypes in a way that is different. So just as our opening slide, which in a way introduces us to classic regional ethnology, here we have a very admittedly poor map of Scotland, but showing the broad divisions between different aspects of soils and regional differentiation, between arable, mixed agriculture and pastoral. So you will notice that towards the north and the west, towards the left hand and upper side of our map, we have a largely pastoral country, and this is a ruling principle, a ruling concept behind so much of Highland history. Well, this is borne out on the ground, where there are very interesting aspects of identification that link language to regional ethnology, so that this particular district of the West Highlands, it's known in English as Kintail, Kintala in Gaelic, and proverbially referred to as Kintala Nambo, Kintail of the cattle, giving it that sense of identity. Well, this is a teasing comment on the left, where we have a rather confusing, perhaps to modern audiences, map of Central Highlands, and it says the road north, but where has the A9 gone? This is the A9 is a major trunk road going through the middle of Scotland from south to north, and if you look at this image from the Atlas Novum of 1654, because Scotland was very well mapped in the Atlas Novum. We don't really see the A9, and in fact we get a sense of axes of communication that are different from the conventional ones as we understand them today. Well, going down to the level of agriculture, this slide is titled Planting Potatoes, Planting the Potato, and it makes the point that the man is using a different sort of spade from what you would expect. And it says the straight spade is being put to use, would be put to use. So as we know in ethnology, you cannot call a spade without differentiating it in many different ways. Now, in terms of evidence for this period of before the Highland clearances, this notorious era of Highland history, we look for images that help our linguistic evidence. And as an example of this sort of evidence, visual evidence we have, because much of the Highlands and Islands is poorly documented in terms of imagery, we have an interesting almost caricature, I suppose, from about 1800 of a lady going up the hill to collect peat in her basket and spinning as she goes. All the details of this are well drawn out in our museum collections. Well, to look at this principal concentration, principal focus of Highland culture through the ages, I show this slightly fanciful print of a drove of cattle being taken to the market. And Torog na Fétalach means basically the product of the wealth of the hills in terms of cattle. And though this is a fairly romantic early 19th century or mid 19th century painting of a cattle drove, it carries many stories, and it can be well described in so many ways. This is an example of evidence that I came across when I started at the Gaelic College in 2007, where I was looking for material culture evidence in language and found this wonderful song to a Highland cow, in which I just transcribed one verse from a 14 or 15 verse song to a Highland cow. And the words mean, she being broad in the brow, scant from her eyes to her muzzle, in other words, a short measurement from her eyes to her muzzle, coat long, black and dense, and no higher below the knee than the span of my hand. Now, what struck me about that, this song from about 1800 betters the breed improvement books of the late 19th century. This is a very good recommendation for the best sort of Highland cow that was such a marketable as I was saying. Well, of course, such an important aspect of the Highland economy was the shieling system and transhumance. And of course, the traces of that are evident in the countryside, but we have drawings and informations, say, from the antiquarians and the archaeologists in the middle of the 19th century, which shows us sheelings being still used in the hill grazings as part of the system of trade. And just in a way to surprise our students, the milking of sheep had more or less died out in the early 20th century, but this picture from the distant island of St Kilda shows the milking of sheep. And in terms of handling the products of milk, of the milking of the sheep, where the milk and the cattle, the milk would be made into cheese and carried back from the hilltop grazings to the townships in vessels, clay vessels such as this. And the title of this slide is The Taste of the Cragan. And it has a whole realm of proverbial meaning behind the use of pottery vessels. And so this, again, is an attempt to bring out the best that we can from material culture and unite it with language to give us some sense of richness and some sense of completeness of the social and economic picture, the ethnological picture of agriculture. Well, fishing, just one slide from the middle of the early 19th century, again, perhaps caricaturing these Highlanders because they're shown in Highland dress. Whether they wore Highland dress or not is a moot point, but when they were fishing in the river, I think this man would be spoiling his shoes. But what we are shown is the use of the fish spear and the so-called burning of the waters, attracting the fish to the light where they're speared and caught by the men in the wading up the river. Just to look at briefly at the Highland clearances where the sheep stock was hugely expanded in the 19th century. The earlier type of sheep, which have largely been forgotten, a type of medieval animal known very fondly in Gaelic tradition as the white-headed sheep, Cura Ceannan. And so the name of these sheep survives in Gaelic tradition and would be largely lost were it not for, I dare say, us flagging it up as part of our course. I've mentioned the Highland clearances once or twice, which relates to the complete agricultural revolution and overturning of the pre-existing economy. And the sheep enclosure or fank, this phrase at the top, ekenaing, is at the fank, and you can see these people shearing sheep in the sheep fank, in the enclosure. And of course, to the informed eye, this shows a completely different form of agriculture from milking the sheep on the shore or something like that. This is a much more capitalistic enterprise. And just to round off the wealth of tradition that exists in Gaelic, we have the picture of the band of women. It was always women who are shrinking the cloth and beating it to beat out the urine that was used to soak it, to shrink it. And the vein of singing is itself hugely important. It survives because of the material culture actions of shrinking the cloth, and the singing survives to today to be a popular form of Gaelic song, but it preserves largely a view of Gaelic society in the 16th century and before. So this is just a very quick impression of what our course consists of and how we might use material culture in an interdisciplinary way to inform students and perhaps to break the mold of conventional university studies to some extent, and of course to use agricultural museum collections. Now, there is an opportunity, there will be opportunities for all my listeners to come to the Gaelic College to do a short course and to learn Gaelic, and this is our campus in the south end of the Isle of Skye, and as you see, the sun is always shining.